Welcome ladies and gentlemen and all hobby enthusiasts. Today we're going to make some sci-fi bases using some household materials. So by household materials, what do I mean? I mean, don't go out specifically and buying certain things. So you can get, from like Green Stuff World, plastic card sheets with embossed sections like this, and you can see I've cut this out to a rough circle to stick on a base at some stage, and I can sand it back to make it fit, and that's perfectly fine. That's pretty cool. It's not bad. That is not bad. But what I'm thinking is using card, using tiny little cables, or if not cables, something a bit more rigid like a paper clip. It makes a very nice cable. Tubes and pipes and things like that, depending on the size of the base. Obviously the smaller the pipe for the smaller base, because remember you've got to put models on these things. You can't have an over convoluted base, try to stick a model on and it hasn't got any purchase. These tiny little things are incredible. Tiny little beads which are great for rivets. So apparently there's 1,000 in there, I haven't counted. And that was literally a couple of quid. So that should last me my hobbying lifetime. Just drill a small hole, tiny spot of glue, and drop one of those in there. Fantastic. I like using this stuff. Now I know it's not everyday household material. This is from a bodywork for cars kit, which I may or may not have acquired from work. Liberated. Possibly, but you could use an old sieve that you don't want, something like that, anything that gives a really nice meshy kind of gantry kind of look to it. Once again, depending on the scale of your base, you could always use what they call granny grating, which is for cross stitch. That's pretty nice. A bit hard to paint on, so it will need to be primed, which is fine because I'm going to prime all my bases before painting. Don't forget good old-fashioned cork. Looks great as concrete. So if you imagine your sci-fi base is going to be more of a urban environment, possibly. Bit of concrete on your base looks wicked, so you can have it as a huge slab, maybe off to one side. Putting those paper clips inside and jutting out makes good rebars. That's fantastic. Don't forget the good old-fashioned corrugated cardboard. So you can buy, like, for example, I have coloured corrugated cardboard here because it's just quicker than trying to separate cardboard. But if time and money's not really much of a factor because it's not very expensive, you know, you can pick a couple of these sheets up, relatively inexpensive. I picked up, I think, 3 in my local craft store, and they work out about 30p each or something like that. But you know, if you are locked in on lockdown and there's plenty of cardboard around, you can just separate corrugated cardboard to find some nice corrugations, which is nice for tin shack roofs. So you can imagine a model standing on a base that could be a tin shack roof. Or packaging. So if you've got any food products, cut out the bottom, and you'll find this looks quite sci-fi-esque. Kind of looks like something you get in the background in Star Wars on the walls, the lights shining through. But yeah, you could put it on the bases. It looks wicked. Some of these products have numbers and stuff on, so you can see, possibly you can see, yep, that way around. There we go. There are some numbers there. Nope, still to them. There we go. Wicked. Ross gets there in the end, people. So like numbers like that on a base could look pretty cool. I mean, maybe not that simple so much, but yeah, on bottoms of fruit containers, meat containers, obviously make sure you sterilize it first. Use that on the bottom of a base. Some numbers. It looks great. Looks like some kind of industrial area. Maybe put some hazard stripes nearby. So that would look really cool, I feel. So I'll give you some examples of what I've done in the past. So these are just generic 32mm bases, and you notice a lot of bases have a bit of texture. So if you sand it right back and it's perfectly smooth, that's fine. You can use it as a base, Or in this instance, I've stuck some cardboard down so it's nice and smooth, and stuck another piece of cardboard there to make it look like a plate that's been welded on top. And now I can drill some holes and pop some rivets in there, and I've stuck a paper clip there to look like some cabling. So very, very basic, not really going out of my way too much, but I will put some rivets on there because detail is king. So with the rivets on there, when I do eventually paint it up, I'm going to make some nice rusty marks around these rivets. So that's kind of stage one of me messing around. And don't forget, like I said, sound the bases to the pretty smooth. I thought that was fairly smooth. Rule number 1 of hobbying, never chuck anything away. So a piece from a scenery kit I've had for quite some time now. I thought that's a lovely little light. I'll stick it to the base, but obviously it needs a power source. So once again, 2 bits of paper clip. Paint those up. Maybe do some object source lighting off of that light on the base and possibly on the miniature that it sticks to. So a great illusion is to cut a section out of the base and stick things underneath the base. Obviously not too fat because of the base will sit on the table, to give the illusion of depth. So yes, you can build up your base, you can make it as high as you want. Amazing. But if you cut and stick some pipes underneath, so no one will ever see that, so it doesn't matter what it looks like, but they will see that. So you can see 2 small pipes there, a larger pipe there, and some kind of access panel there, which once again, a bit of cardboard, and I will drill a couple holes in and put those lovely rivets in. And that is the check plate that I've stuck on top. So get as creative as you like. I say check plate, I meant mesh. Check plate, on the other hand, is on this. So I had a spare bit, and I sanded this back previously and just stuck that on there. That's pretty cool. It doesn't look too bad. But if you ever want anything to look welded, I have got a secret ingredient, which is from my local craft store. There's loads of this kind of thing around, so you don't have to get this exact thing. But Pearl Effects. Basically, it's not really a glue. It's for crafting, for cards and things like that. It's quite thick, and you'll never really get a perfectly straight edge with it. So it's fantastic if you want to make something look like it's been welded. So I'm going to do that right now. So on this piece here, I'm going to have some rivets in that corner, but I would like some weld. So what I'm going to do is, I might even use this piece here actually. So that is just a straw from a WD-40 can, and I'm actually going to make some weld with this. So I'll zoom the camera right in, hopefully not get my fat little fingers in the way, so you can see what's going on. Zoom, 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 zoom. Right, of course you have to make noises so it doesn't work when you say zoom, 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 zoom. Alright, so I'm going to try to do this so you guys can still see, which would be helpful, right? So I'm going to do a couple little bits of weld. So just gently squeeze and kind of tease this stuff out. When it dries, it will dry slightly flatter, but not much flatter than that. So as you can tell, I was being slightly jerky with my hands because I want that to look like weld. And I'll do another one across here on the edge. Just teasing it out slightly rather than splooging it everywhere. That's a very technical term. This is where it splooges everywhere. It's going to meet up. When it dries, it's going to look like weld. So not massively straight, but it doesn't need to be. This is going to look slightly orky for those 40k players. And then when that dries, it's perfectly fine to paint. But like I said, I will prime all of these. So that's just a simple crafting product. And the granny grating. So I tried to make an extra layer, and I've put some bits of clock mechanism underneath, so a bit more steampunk. I I've had a little raised step here. Once again, some leftover pieces from some 40k terrain to make it look like a step. And I'm going to clean that up and really make those gears pop. So what I probably should have done before sticking the top bit on is paint those gears up. But I don't know whether to paint it nice and crisp and neat or make it look really, really rusty. So for this whole section, I will paint them all up in one go, and I'm going to make them look a bit more cyberpunk. So yes, we see lots of rusted bases normally about, and that's fine, that's great. But I'm going to try to add some vibrant colours into this, really make these pop, and then show you what I have done. Rivets aren't exactly massively technical, so I've done a video on rivets previously. But for now, I will show you with a little pin drill how I make some little holes and drop some rivets in, just for this video alone. But if you want to see the full detailed video, check out the previous. Okay, so you can buy loads and loads of different things from loads of stores, so you don't have to use household materials, but I am in this video. So one of my favourite things you can buy is plastic rolled steel joists. So loads of hobby stores have those, but if you don't have the resources or you can't get out to get these things, I use stir sticks. So I keep stir sticks all the time, and what I mean by that, I mean companies like Costa, other coffee shops are available, and you can just make rolled steel joists for them. You could even use thick cardboard as long as it's not corrugated, anything like that, if you want a very industrial feel on your bases. But I was talking about this and the number on it, so I'll get a sharp pair of scissors now and I'll cut that out and stick that to a base. So use whatever medium you want. So if you're thinking a sci-fi wasteland and you're going to have a sandy base with bits of scrap metal sticking out, you can use that granny grating, or you can use that mesh or that check plate sticking out of a sandy base. But in this video I'm going to do more of a industrial sci-fi base. So I've cut the basic shape out because I just want that number on there. So it's going to look quite plain initially until I paint it up, and then I'm going to put some hazard stripes on. So get a nice sharp pair of scissors to do that, and then put it face down and draw around the exact shape you need. So as if by magic, that's been done, and now I'll cut it out, keeping just inside the line, keeping as neat as possible. The only tip is, remember to glue the number the right way around, and if there's anything overhanging, don't worry, you can always trim it off, or you can always leave it rough if you like. I'm going to trim off as much as I can, and now sand off the edges to make it nice and smooth. But if you want it to look jaggedy and like just a slab of metal welded in place, it's totally fine. The only limit is your imagination. So I'll do this now as much as I can, and I'll sand off the excess. Just a bit of sandpaper just to make it a little bit smoother. So once it's all sanded, you should have something like this, which looks really boring and plain until we put some paint on it. So that's going to be the next stage. So hopefully you guys are getting some great hobby ideas right now. There's no uniform way to do it, and there shouldn't be. This should be fun and free-flowing, and you can make anything you want. So from panels welded to panels lifted up and you can spy something underneath, to even making your base get even higher. You can put steps in it like that, and object source lighting even. So I'll prime all these up and then we'll go through some paint schemes. So after you prime it, whatever primer you want to seal it with, I like to use a fairly cheap can from a local pound store. I then like a little bit of this stuff from Vallejo. So it is black, but it's metallic black. So basically it's just a very, very, very dark silver. So you can see here, that's your black base. It is just a very, very dark silver. Now I've started picking out some spot colours. So going with a bit of a theme for all the bases, so they all tie in together. So any pipes and cabling and things like that, I'm starting to paint red. And obviously painting over a dark colour, you might want to put 2 coats on. So while that's drying, the base with the numbers on, I'm going to do some hazard stripes. So what I've done is I've stuck on some hobby tape, 3 stripes here, and I'm going to cut the centerpiece to make check plating. So hobby tape, when you peel it off, shouldn't remove any paint from underneath. But if you don't have any of that and you're doing it on a budget rather than rushing out and buying a whole row of tape that you don't need, if you've got any masking tape and just remove a bit of the stickiness, that's totally fine. But just remember, you just need a very, very sharp knife when cutting out the hazard stripes, as if you tear the paper, it could ruin the illusion. So I marked out approximately with a pen where I want the hazard stripes, and to remember to remove every other stripe. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to start with a sharp knife and a ruler to get my straight edges. So I'm going to try to do this on camera without being in the way. So nice and sharp edges. And this is when it doesn't work, isn't it? When you're doing it on camera. So like I said, sharpest knife as possible. You don't want that paper to tear. Okay, so remember to do every other. And once you cut it, just remove very, very carefully, as this is hobby tape, so it shouldn't take the paint off, but still I'm not just going to rip it off. Nice and steady, just like so. No point in doing that one because obviously it's off the base, and that's where I'm going to spray my yellow to. So I'll do that now. I think Avalanche Sunset is quite a nice, almost like a mustardy yellow from Games Workshop. It's got maybe a bit of red in it as well, so like I said, it gives it a bit more realistic hazard stripe yellow than a stupidly bright colour. So I'll do that now, just with an airbrush, just for quickness and ease. But at home, if you don't have an airbrush, not a problem, a regular brush will do. Just remember, you probably want 2 thin coats as you're spraying or painting over a dark colour. Okay, so once dry, with any luck, I'll peel this off now, and it should look pretty good. So it's still maybe slightly tacky. I'm just going to be very, very careful in peeling this off. And this is when it goes horribly, horribly wrong. So this is hobby tape, so you can see that glue there on the underside of the tape, and it hasn't taken off any of the paint underneath, and that's the idea. But I possibly thinned out my paint a little bit too much in the airbrush because I think it had a bit of capillary action and went underneath the tape. But if you're using a regular brush, that wouldn't happen. The paint's probably a bit on the thicker side. And it's all sticking to my hands. But yeah, it's getting there. We're getting there. You should be able to see roughly what I'm talking about. Those are the numbers there. So it's not too bad, not too bad. I'll just remove this bit of glue in the middle. So yeah, little techniques like that just make it a little bit more realistic. And obviously I'll just tidy it up a little bit. But things like that really should make the base look a bit more realistic. So what I like to do with sci-fi bases, especially anything for like 40k, games like that, anything post-apocalyptic like Outlands, I like a little bit of contrast. So I like a little bit of rust, grime, dark, and then some pop in. So for example, this base here, concrete at the back, and kind of dark at the front, and a splurge of blood, a little bit of rust in places. And this one here, for example, so I've got a gantry with a bit of rust, some bright pipe underneath, or bright-ish, don't want to make it look too crazy. And this one here, a bit of splatter blood, bit of oxidized like copper plate over there as well. So I don't want it to be too striking, too powerful to outdo the model. So for these bases I'm probably going to put some more Outlands models on these, and yeah, I want the team to be fairly bright, eye-catching, with a really grubby dark base. So when it comes to bases as well, remember detail. So even though it's just a base, alright, you don't want to be too bright and too eye-catching, but a little bit of detail. So a little bit of the stencil work there, that was just freehand, a bit of blood splattered on it. And I will paint that light up as well. I'm not sure what colour to go with just yet, because it's going to be fairly bright, I would imagine. So a bit of object source lighting. If I put the model on it, I want the light to strike the model as well. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. I mean, the weld turned out alright. Obviously this was the paint's still drying here. I'm going to weather up the black a bit more as well. The black's a bit too pristine, but you can see there's a bit of chipping effect on the yellow, a little bit of grime there, a little bit of blood as well. So what I like to do is pretty much all my bases, I think black frames a base really, really well. I know a lot of people have painted, let's say they do like a Martian base, like a reddish brown kind of rim on the base. That's totally fine. That's up to you. For me personally, I like to have a nice strong black on the edge of the base. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get not a knackered brush, but not a perfect brush. A little bit of black on the palette. And now I'm just going to, you can probably hear a dog barking in the background next door. So just go all the way around, nice and smoothly, to thin the black out a little bit. Just try not to get any brush strokes, so nice and smooth. Just go all the way around with all the bases, and then once it's dry it should pop just that little bit. And there we have it, just an example of what you can do with some household materials. Yeah, fair point, that there and the edge of the step, that is from just random bits box finds that I've got. But yeah, you can make whatever you want, basically. If you want to make a tiny little drinks can, what I've done before in the past is use like Mr. Kipling tin foil. Yes, you have to eat the whole pack just to get one tiny piece of tin foil. And just make a cylinder around a paintbrush and then dent the end in once you glued it on with the tip of said paintbrush. So that's a great little can, so you can make a drinks can out of it, you can make a food can. I've got a little newspaper here, just a little bit of detail, and I made it grubby just with the oils in my finger after using a pen and writing on it. You know, it's all about the little details like that. I don't want to make the bases too extravagant and take it too much away from the miniatures. And I still wanted to make it look a bit sci-fi, a little bit post-apocalyptic, nay, a little bit grimdark possibly, if that word's not used too much these days. But yeah, like a little bit of realistic detail. So on here, with the plate moved to one side as an access panel. There you go. It didn't take me very long. It took me an evening basically, but it took me longer to make a plan. So they're all similar colours. You know, there's blues and greys and rusts in there. All the similar kind of tone, but you can really vary it if you wanted to, or you could just put check plate on each one and make it fairly basic. It's totally up to you what you can do. It's just a few examples here. Okay guys, thank you for watching. If you haven't done already, please hit that like button. Please subscribe, it really helps with algorithms. If you want to put up some examples of your bases, or your terrain builds, or whatever you're painting at the moment, head on over to Facebook to House Chaos Community. We'd really love to see your work. Now the world's slowly returning to normal, we would even like to see your battle reports. Just throw up a message there saying, had a great game with a mate I haven't seen in ages, or something like that. It's always nice to hear those kind of things, or see your pictures or progress. Keep this community going. Love you guys. Stay safe.